The original 1998 Sonic Adventure is arguably one of the most important Sonic games to ever be released, helping us transition the classic 2D Sonic from the early and mid 1990s to the one that most of us recognize him as to this day.
What's up?
But to my surprise, having fond memories of it from my childhood, a lot of fans do consider it to be not so good.
No!
While many others still hold the idea that it's one of the best the franchise has to offer. So I set out on a mission these past few weeks to determine, is this game as good as I remember? Or is it simply a case of nostalgia? Let's find out. Before we do begin, I want to state that I don't want this review to be an exact copy-paste of the numerous adventure reviews that are already out there. So, there's a couple things I'd briefly like to get out of the way.
My way!
Now, Sonic Adventure has aged a lot. I mean, anyone with half a brain cell can see that and understand why. It's a game from freaking 1998. Like, damn, give it a break, Reddit. But that being the case, compared to modern games, it does look quite old, and even, at least in my opinion, it's aged a bit worse than some 3D competitors of its time, such as Mario 64. Though given its age and taking into consideration the powerhouse of Nintendo as a direct competitor, Sega did a good job here, and it looks pretty decent for a 25-year-old game. The only thing in regard to animation that I'd heavily criticize is the walking animations, the pacing, and the synchronization of the dialogue, but those are all things that we'll cover in a moment. Now, I'll also bring up bits and pieces and general overviews of the story, but to recap the entirety would take the entire video, and it's something that would not necessarily help differentiate this review from others that are already existing. Anyway, short and sweet backstory here. Although Adventure predates Adventure 2, obviously, this is actually the second game I played as a kid, because, well, I didn't have a Dreamcast, and Adventure 2 Battle came out around the time when I was getting old enough to actually play video games. Also, the footage you will see throughout the video is of Adventure DX. I have played both versions at different points in my life, but I personally don't remember any major differences between the two, aside from the obvious graphical upgrades. But if I am missing something, please feel free to let me know.
You are completely surrounded!
Moving on, what makes this game different from a lot of previous 2D entries is the main antagonist isn't Eggman. No, this time he's got Chaos.
Chaos!
And he's got him whipped. Well, for now.
It's that creature.
Chaos is a water god of destruction creature who starts off small and easy to beat, seen first in Sonic's opening fight against his base form, Chaos Zero. But as he absorbs Chaos Emeralds, however, he transforms, becoming more difficult of an adversary with each new form. This is made apparent from the very moment that you start the game, with its thrilling intro that showcases Chaos' final form in action. I guess they weren't overly concerned with spoilers, because the intro does largely showcase the final battle with Perfect Chaos. Perhaps to incentivize you to make it through all the stories, including some below par ones.
Oh man, where could that Pollywog pal be anyway?
One thing I have to commend the Sonic series on though, at least so far in my playthroughs, is their intros and accompanying theme songs. The intro is really cool, fast-paced, and it sets up the game phenomenally. It starts off with some intense, dark music, but then smoothly transitions into Open Your Heart by Crush 40. Open Your Heart is the perfect mixture of uplifting, but at the same time, it's not so corny. Definitely getting me excited to relive the entirety of the OST. Although Crush 40 songs are always the highlight for me in just about every game they're in. They always made me feel like a badass playing Sonic as a kid. The soundtrack will differ depending on what story you're playing through though, and also what area of the map that you're in. But for the most part, it's straight heat. No complaints here. This game introduced us to multiple hub worlds, each having their own unique areas to explore and unique soundtracks. These hub worlds, including Station Square, the opening hub world, Mystic Ruins, and if we want to get technical, the Egg Carrier. But some of my personal favorites in the track list are Open Your Heart and also Tails' theme, I Wanna Fly High. But most of the other songs were great as well. I should mention, there's also a bit in the options menu where you can listen to every track from the game. Pretty neat, but it was probably a lot more useful, you know, pre-YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music era. Now, before we get into the story and the gameplay, we're greeted with a decent menu screen and mode selection. It's a rather boring format, and again, I don't typically look to Sonic games for their extensive replay value outside of story mode. But that being said, there are some options here. These being Adventure, Trial, and Mission. The latter of the two need to be unlocked by progressing through the story. Adventure is, as you would expect, the main campaign of the game. But along with the transition to 3D, this is also where we start getting into the separate campaign era. One per each of the 6 heroes in the game. I always love the adventure format of different storylines that all culminate to one final last story ending. This was always so captivating as a kid, and even as an adult now too. It's something I genuinely feel like they could expand on in a remake of the series, leading to a brand new Adventure 3, sort of like what Crash Bandicoot did with the Insane Trilogy. Now to expand on what I stated previously, Adventure introduces us to explorable hub worlds. Now while I do enjoy these hub worlds for what they are, Station Square, Mystic Ruins, all very nostalgic for me. They are very lifeless. Like there's moving cars here, sure, but the people, they don't move and they just seem so bland. The exploration for its time is pretty top tier though, and you could surely still have some fun with it to this day. Secret paths in Mystic Ruins, hidden sewers, a casino area that opens up at nighttime, and even a train that takes you to and from the 2 main hubs. All extremely fun to explore, in my opinion. Now back to the character selection. Only Sonic is available from the very start, but you will quickly get Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Big, and Gamma, simply from just playing Sonic's story. I do think some of these were unnecessary though, but we'll expand on Adventure in a lot more detail once I briefly explain the other modes in the game. Secondly, Trial is a mode that gives you the opportunity to play back any level or sub-level that you've completed in Adventure. Remember those extra missions that you never completed, like collect 50 rings and reach the end? Well, you could do those here, as well as improve your score from previous playthroughs. Lastly, and least, we have Mission Mode. Do I have to go over this one? Fine. Mission Mode seems like a cheesy, random thing they added for replay value. Like our mission here is to quote-unquote bring the guy from the burger shop to the station entrance. What? Why do I have to do that? And this is a human I'm manhandling. Or is it a wax dummy? And did I just kill him? What is going on? Now, I'm exaggerating a bit, but I only did like 3 of these, so if you do unlock anything cool, or if later missions are better, or if they all suck in general, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Now that we have all additional content out of the way, let's fully discuss the campaign and gameplay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Basically, if you don't know how the adventure style works, there will be an overarching story, but it's always divided into different teams, groups, or characters. So you only get the full story when playing with every, in this case, character, as each character has their own perspective of the events that take place. Also, each character on the screen will have a percentage completion rate. I always love when games show just how much percent you have completed, because I just like to know how close I am to finishing the game. But maybe that's just a me thing.
Go, Sonic! Yeah, Sonic!
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 During Sonic's initial playthrough, which will most likely be your first and best by far, you will come across in one way or another each playable character, unlocking them by proxy. So if you're thinking about playing this game for the first time, I would highly suggest to play through the entirety of Sonic's story first, but also understand that it's probably only downhill from there. Now that's not to say that every story is bad, although some of them aren't great, but Sonic's story is probably what you bought this game for. I always love Sonic levels in these games, and Sonic Adventure is no exception. High speed running, doing your classic homing attack, and the spin dash, not to mention light dash. I mean, the other stories, while entertaining and definitely fun in their own right, just don't compare and often feel like filler, at least in this particular game. Sonic's is also the longest by far, hosting over 10 levels, where every other character has 5, and it's also the most fleshed out, with the most bosses, exploration, and the most complete and least rushed feeling story. We'll also touch on which of these are my favorite in a bit as well. Now, don't get me wrong, Sonic's story is fun to play through, and it's absolutely great. Not to mention the blueprint for just about every 3D Sonic that follows this game. But there's a lot of, shall we say, iffy things that you'll probably notice about it pretty quickly. As early as the first level, you'll notice that you do glitch out sometimes, leading to unjustified deaths. Sometimes you'll run to the side and fall right off, and other times you'll just straight up glitch through things. To be fair though, some of these I've heard only happen in the DX port, and also this happened a lot less than I was expecting. But there certainly are bugs in both versions of the game.
On the loose.
No problem. He's just a chunk of cheesy hardware.
Or here at the end of Final Egg. The level was supposed to end here, but I died because I guess it didn't register that I reached the end goal? I'm not entirely sure. The camera angle can also be real wonky at times. Sometimes I won't be able to see myself at all, and other times it will be showing what's behind me, when it should be showing what's in front of me, so like I don't fall off a cliff or something.
Mission failed.
Now again, I had to bring these up because they are issues, but a lot of 3D platformers, especially early ones, do suffer from this issue. Hell, even Mario 64 struggled a lot in these departments, so we could definitely give Sonic Adventure a pass for this. Also, and bear with me, the game really isn't that bad, but the walking animations, I mean, what the hell is going on with some of these? The characters walk so freaking slow. This is a Sonic speed-based game, mind you, that it even appears like they're walking in place sometimes. And even when they are moving, it just looks so odd. Not to mention the voices also sound like Google text-to-speech, and things are spoken in such an awkward way.
That's Eggman. I wonder what happened to Sonic.
Long story short, these are things, while seemingly minor to the overall enjoyment, and somewhat normal for a late 90s game, could be greatly improved upon in a remake. And I bet it would make a world of a difference.
But Angel Island is still falling.
As I mentioned, aside from Sonic, there are 5 other storylines. In my head, I separated them into 2 groups. Group A being Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, having fairly good, I guess Tails isn't that bad, and debatably more fleshed out stories.
Don't mess with me now.
These stories, although different, will focus on the same main bosses, Eggman and Chaos. Now, I do think Chaos is a pretty cool villain, and certainly an interesting one at that. Though I do feel he was a bit underutilized here, for the game being about him. He just pops up when boss fights are required, and not much else. And with the exception of his final form, I thought the 2 later Eggman fights were a lot more innovative and fun to fight against. I was also super curious to see what Chaos 3, Chaos 5, and even Chaos 1 looked like, but we never got that. I mean, hopefully they would have been better than Chaos 4 at least.
Yeah!
Now moving on to Group B, which consists of Amy, Big, and Gamma. The latter of the 2 making their first appearance in a Sonic game. This group seemed simpler, shorter, and although playing their own part respectively, seem less important to the overall narrative. Each of these stories, however, will still for the most part have a very similar structure and will intertwine with one another at certain or multiple parts throughout. Many of these connections will show the exact same sequence, but with minor changes to the dialogue. Check this out. Here's the exact same scene from Amy and Gamma's story, just with the dialogue ever so slightly altered.
What do you want?
Hand me the bird.
Nope.
Quietly hand over the bird.
Go away.
Give me the bird.
No way.
Resistance is futile. Give me the bird.
These instances, though, although very frequent, are more good than bad, in my opinion. At least in this case. I mean, if we're going to get repeat scenes, it's nice for them to alter it in some way. Although the varying dialogue does make it very difficult to tell what is canon. Now, this can get a bit repetitive, as some character stories will repeat levels and cutscenes more often than others. The primary example here is of Tails' story mode.
Oh no!
Tails' story is a shortened version of Sonic's, through Tails' perspective,
That's Eggman.
until the tail end of
I
it.
wonder what happened to Sonic.
This is because Tails follows around Sonic for the majority of his campaign, so there's not much new stuff to add to it. Due to this, Tails levels will mostly be variations of Sonic levels, in which you have to race Sonic to the end. Why? What's the point? Who knows? This is an interesting way to switch things up. Tails can fly, of course, so it makes winning against Sonic that much easier, as you can completely avoid certain obstacles and segments of the level. I also try to stay away from Sonic as much as possible during these, because if you are neck and neck, he will constantly say the same prompts over and over and over again, including my favorite, hey hey hey, like he's Fat Albert or something.
Come on! Hey, Tails! Hey, hey, hey! See you later, Tails!
Long story short, I really did not care much for Tails' story mode. But was it the worst? No. Not even close. The worst, by far, has to be Big the Cat's story. I mean, what is going on here, man? Fishing? In a Sonic game? Not only a minigame like in Frontiers, but an entire story devoted to it. The general idea here is that basically Big's pet frog, which is named Froggy, because of course it is, swallows a Chaos Emerald, and a piece of Chaos himself. This leads to him acting up, so we gotta go catch him. 5 times. I mean, how did he even get loose on 5 separate occasions, after we just caught him? Now, that being said, I'm not much of a fan of this part of the game, but when people say, this is why I never finished the game, I have to admit I am a bit confused. Now, I don't think I'm a fishing master, and I finished Big Story in about 20 minutes or so. The better part of that time was in the beginning, where I had a little trouble getting Frog in the line. But once I got that down, it was a pretty quick story. If you can't figure it out though, I recommend that once you get Froggy on the lure, immediately pull to the left. Then once it's a hit, tap to reel in until the bar is about 75% full. Let go for 1 to 2 seconds, and then reel in again. Should be a walk in the park. But let me know, please, in the comments. Did you guys struggle with this part of the game? And if so, what was it that made you feel like this part was difficult? Or why did you hate it? Or why did you love it? I'm genuinely curious.
Now we'll see who's so easily
Now, if I had to pick a second favorite story, it would definitely be Knuckles. Knuckles is the only other character that felt purposeful enough to devote his own story to, as he plays a larger role in the overall narrative than we get to see from Sonic's perspective. It shows more of the backstory of the game, and also follows him as he hunts for the Emerald Shards to restore the Grand Emerald. I know it's typically a hit or miss with the fandom here, but I do genuinely enjoy hunting for the Emerald Shards. It's a breath of fresh air and adds some variety that's actually pretty enjoyable to the overall game. Now, just to quickly brief Amy's story, it entails her running from a newly introduced robot, Zero, in each of her levels. Zero is extremely easy to avoid, and even if they get close to you, you can just bonk them and problem solved. It can be kind of fun, but not my favorite. It's also the shortest story in the game, so if you want to get that over with quickly, I recommend just doing it on your lunch break or something. Lastly, Gamma's story is actually pretty fun, and one of the most different. Unlike other characters, your time runs down here, so you have to destroy other robots to gain extra time. Your purpose here is to, at least in the later half, free all the other E-Series robots by killing them? At least I thought so at first. Turns out, you and all the other E-Series are birds, who were captured by Eggman, and forced to be submissive Eggman little robots. Or big robots, they're pretty big. Not gonna lie, the ending here was pretty touching, seeing Gamma and Beta both blowing each other up to free one another. At least I think that was intentional on Beta's behalf. But in the end, they all fly off together to be free. Young love. Each of these characters will also have their own power-ups, which are collectible in adventure mode. Some of these are necessary to continue, and others will be optional, usually hidden or at least out of the plain sight from the current objective. For instance, Sonic will find Light Dash pretty early on, an ability that will prove necessary to complete some future quests. But there will be optional upgrades to this, which you may or may not come across during his initial playthrough. Also, I somehow found Knuckles' hidden power-up while flying around aimlessly. Well, okay, I'm not gonna lie. I actually looked this power-up on YouTube. But like, how often do people find this without prior knowledge of the game? It's in such an awkward place on the map. Each character here will also have the ability to collect animals, which can be obtained from destroying normal enemies throughout the game stages. These can be given to your Chow, which I believe make their first appearance in this game. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't played through all the 2D games that came prior yet. But let me know if you guys want to see those, because I do plan on playing every Sonic game ever made at some point on this very channel. Anyway, these animals can alter your Chow's abilities in many different ways. Pretty cool little thing if you do choose to get into it. Back to the story though. Each of these different stories will have their own bosses. Group A mostly focus on Chaos and Eggman, while Group B has more unique bosses to their own story. Regardless, for the most part, the boss fights are very fun. There are those few bosses that you fight throughout the game when, like, how do I phrase this? Humanoid characters fight each other, like Sonic vs. Knuckles or Sonic vs. Gamma. Those fights just feel very clunky and awkward to me, but the Chaos, Eggman, E-Series, and even Zero fights are all very well done and play fantastic. Although I'm not the biggest fan of Chaos Forward's level structure. Ugh. That being said though, while extremely fun, these bosses are so easy. Really the entire game is. Almost to an insulting degree. Like there are some grown men playing this game 25 years after release, you know? Did you not think of that, Sega?
Get a load of this!
To avoid going over the entire story and every level in the game, let me break down my list of the ones that stuck out the most as harder, best, and worst levels in the game. Now, while Skydeck wasn't the hardest in the game, it was the first level that took me over 10 minutes to complete. It is fairly long, and there's a bunch of different paths you could take, and it's also broken up into a few exciting different sections. These are all good things. The level is very fun, but the wind tunnel towards the end can be a bit tricky, especially if you're going fast. Excess speed, combined with carelessness, will cause you lose control, and constantly repeat this area. Just go nice and slow, and I'm sure you'll beat my time with flying colors. But just when I thought that'd be the extent of the difficulty in the game, in came Lost World. Now, I can't remember all the levels, but I'm just gonna say it. This is the hardest level in the game. Not to say it was that hard, but compared to everything else previously, this is Sonic Dark Souls. For starters, the 3 switches in the beginning can be a bit confusing at first, and it's definitely not uncommon to die here. The enemies here are probably more difficult than you're used to by this point in the game, and the area where you have to hit the switch and run up the corresponding wall in a particular order, it's definitely the hardest puzzles in the game. So if you've got this, you're good to go. Also, the boulder chase here was really fun and simple. A nice change of pace midway through. Now, in terms of best level in the game, it was a bit more challenging to narrow down the selection to just 1 or 2, as all levels are enjoyable in their own right. But in my opinion, the best level in the game has to go to Sonic's Final Egg. Ironically, coming directly after the hardest level in the entire game. The ending level for Sonic's story wasn't difficult, but boy was it fun. This stage is full of high-speed moments, baddies to hover attack, and light dashes. It also ends with the final boss of Sonic's story, Egg Viper, which I quite like. Egg Viper is probably my favorite boss, aside from Perfect Chaos. It's just your standard platform boss. You dodge blast, and then attack when Eggman opens himself up for it, but I love that kind of stuff. Who needs the over-the-top modern boss levels? Eggman's health bar is also longer than usual as well, and he even switches attack patterns halfway through. Wow, a boss that actually stops doing the one thing that allows you to beat him? Well, at least kind of. Honorable mention here for best level is Ice Cap. I just love a good Sonic snowboarding level. Although not as smooth as City Escape's version in the subsequent game, you can still do some pretty cool tricks if you hit the ramps at a certain speed. You're also dodging an avalanche the entire time too, which is pretty sick aesthetically. Now quickly, just imagine how good these levels would look in modern technology. Also, working out those little quirks that made the game not as good as it could be, a PS5, Steam, Xbox Series S remake of this game along with 2 and Heroes would be incredible, and something that Sega is definitely underestimating the power of sales potential for. Lastly, although I would consider every level in Big the Cat Story to be the worst the game has to offer, that'd be a cop-out. Still, if you played Adventure, you could probably guess what the contenders are. But I'm gonna have to go with Sonic's Casino level as the worst in the game. Appearing early in Sonic's story, you must win a certain amount of rings to build a hill large enough to collect the emerald. You basically just have to play pinball for a long time to get enough coins for this to happen. Now, either I'm a pinball wizard, or this is ridiculously easy. I knew I had enough at one point and just kept going because I didn't want to purposely throw. But at some point, I just had to. I could have wasted my entire night hitting those flippers. After I finished this level, I remembered there was an alternate route, which is actually really fun, so I replayed it for the video. This is made available by purposely throwing the game and getting less than 100 coins, and is way better than the pinball game. It's a quicker and better way to get the required amount of coins. definitely recommend doing it this way if you plan on playing. Once you complete every character's story, however, you will unlock the hidden final story, Supersonic. Long story short, Chaos is back, and he's stolen the final Chaos Emerald from the Tornado 2. Eggman himself then retaliates against Chaos, resulting in a rather quick demise. Now at this point, like me, you're probably wondering, how is Sonic about to become Supersonic? Right? Well, apparently, Chaos only used the negative power of the emeralds, so Sonic can use the real power. Huh? I mean, hey, that's a bit corny in my opinion, but I don't really mind. Whatever gets me the opportunity to play Supersonic again. Now, I completely did not expect Chaos to be this fun to fight. I had a great time here. You're basically surfing on water the entire time, like you're Sonic Jesus. Hitting ramps and attempting to make it through the flooded city and hit Chaos's brain. Definitely a great first impression of playing Supersonic in 3D format, and although it's aged, the fun factor still holds up well to this day. You'll need to make sure you dodge Chaos's attacks, which slow you down drastically, and hit speed boosts, because if you reach him and you're not going full speed, you won't make it far enough to hit the brain, and you'll have to restart from the other side of the city. I was also pleasantly surprised to see Chaos has 2 health bars here, resulting in 2 different phases. As with any other Supersonic level, you cannot be damaged, but you do lose rings over time. And if you do lose all the rings, you will lose a life. The rings don't respawn in the second phase, so you have to be very cautious and finish them as fast as possible. Once you do finish Perfect Chaos, however, he becomes good again, and peace returns for the meantime. And well, the end. That's really just about it. Before we do wrap up here, I want to quickly discuss my overall opinion on Sonic Adventure. What makes it so important to the franchise, and also if it deserves or needs a remake / remaster on modern day consoles. Sonic Adventure was an absolute blast to play through again, and I couldn't be more happy to have started this journey on replaying the entirety of the Adventure series again. But that being said, the game has aged quite noticeably, not only in terms of graphics, but certain aspects of the game and the mechanics that may have been acceptable back in its day just feel really clunky and hard to play in modern day. Now, that's also only from the perspective of someone who set out playing this game with the intention of reviewing it. I would absolutely hate if I stopped anyone from playing this amazing, incredible masterpiece of a game. And you could definitely get past these minor issues and have a great time with the game. I know I had an absolute amazing time, for sure. Sonic Adventure is undoubtedly the most important Sonic game of all time. It is the reason, the blueprint for every Sonic game that follows it, especially up until 2009 or 10, but still, Frontiers and Forces still would not exist without this game. The 3D character models also all stem from here, and the character selection for multiple storylines, at least for the Adventure era, all started right here. And also, I do believe this game could extremely benefit from a remaster or remake on modern day consoles. There is a large, humongous fan base spanning multiple generations, from Gen Z, probably younger, whatever they're called, all the way to Gen Xers who grew up with the originals. The older fans would get the game for nostalgia, and the younger fans would get the game because they just love everything that Sonic makes. The remasters or remakes would not only bring the game's graphics up to date, but also could correct bugs, poor mechanics, and other negatives that I mentioned. Overall, I did truly enjoy this game, and I could not recommend picking it up more if you're a Sonic fan. Also, I think a Sonic Adventure Trilogy remaster would be freaking amazing. Let me know if you feel the same way, and as always, please feel free to show your support if you enjoy the video by liking, subscribing, and commenting by letting me know what you thought of the video, what you want to see me review next. And yeah, I'll be back in about 2 weeks with a new vid. Peace.